The morning of May 6, 2023 began with a sense of magic in the air. Inside Kensington Palace, the Wales family was preparing for one of the most important days in British history. Kate Middleton stood before a full-length mirror in her dressing room, watching as her personal stylist made the final adjustments to her ivory Alexander McQueen gown. The dress was a masterpiece of elegance, featuring delicate silver embroidery that caught the light with every movement. A flowing cape adorned with royal symbols draped gracefully from her shoulders, symbolizing her role as the future queen consort. In the next room, Prince William adjusted his ceremonial uniform with practiced precision. The deep blue fabric of the Royal Air Force uniform was decorated with golden braids and medals that told the story of his service to the nation. His face showed calm determination, though his mind raced with thoughts of the historic day ahead. This was not just about witnessing his father become King Charles III. It was about showing the world that the monarchy was ready for a new era, with a younger generation prepared to carry the tradition forward. Down the hallway, their three children were experiencing their own preparations. 9-year-old Prince George stood still as a palace aide helped him into his page boy uniform. The crimson and gold outfit made him look like a young prince from a storybook. George understood the weight of his role today. He would walk in the coronation procession and assist with carrying the ceremonial robes. His parents had explained the importance of representing their family with dignity and grace. Princess Charlotte, age 8, twirled in front of her mirror wearing a white dress with delicate floral patterns. Her hair had been styled into soft curls with a small tiara nestled on top. She practiced her curtsy again and again, wanting everything to be perfect. Charlotte had always been fascinated by royal ceremonies, and today she would be part of one of the biggest celebrations in the world. Her excitement was barely contained as she rehearsed walking with grace and poise. 5-year-old Prince Louis was the bundle of energy in the family. Getting him ready proved to be the greatest challenge of the morning. He kept asking questions about everything. Why was his suit so fancy? How long would they have to sit still? Could he wave to the people outside? His nanny patiently answered each question while making sure his miniature suit fit perfectly. Louis might have been the youngest, but his bright eyes and curious nature made him impossible to ignore. The palace staff moved through the rooms like a well-choreographed dance. Hairstylists worked their magic while makeup artists ensured every detail was camera-ready. Security personnel reviewed their plans one final time. The royal carriage waited outside, polished to perfection and decorated with golden accents that gleamed in the morning sunlight. Everything had to be flawless because the entire world would be watching. Kate took a moment to gather her children together. She knelt down to their level despite her elaborate gown and looked into each of their faces. Her voice was gentle but firm as she reminded them of their responsibilities. They would represent not just their family, but the future of the British monarchy. She told them to be brave, to smile, and to remember that millions of people would be inspired by their grace. George nodded seriously. Charlotte squeezed her mother's hand, and Louis promised to be on his best behavior. William joined his family in the preparation room. He stood beside Kate, and together they looked at their children with a mixture of pride and emotion. This was more than a formal ceremony. It was a moment that would define their family's place in history. William placed his hand on George's shoulder, a silent gesture of support and encouragement. Kate adjusted Charlotte's tiara one last time. Even young Louis seemed to sense the magnitude of the moment and stood a little straighter. Outside Kensington Palace, the streets were already filling with people. Flags waved in the breeze. Camera crews from around the world had set up their equipment hours before dawn. The anticipation was electric. Everyone wanted to catch a glimpse of the royal family as they made their way to Westminster Abbey. The coronation of King Charles III would be a historic event, but the appearance of Prince William, Kate, and their children would capture hearts everywhere. As the clock ticked closer to departure time, the Wales family stood together in the grand entrance hall. Photographers were allowed in for a brief moment to capture the image of the family before they left. Kate's elegant presence, William's dignified bearing, and the children's innocent beauty created a picture of modern royalty. The cameras clicked rapidly, preserving this moment for history books and newspapers around the globe. In just a few minutes, they would step into the carriage and begin their journey to Westminster Abbey, where the world awaited their arrival. The royal carriage rolled smoothly through the gates of Kensington Palace, beginning its journey toward Westminster Abbey. Inside the ornate vehicle, the Wales family sat with perfect posture. Kate held Louis on her lap while Charlotte sat beside her brother George. William sat across from them, his eyes occasionally glancing out the window at the massive crowds lining the streets. The people had come from all corners of the United Kingdom and beyond, waving flags and holding handmade signs expressing their love for the royal family. The carriage route had been planned with precision. They traveled through some of London's most iconic streets, passing historic landmarks that had witnessed centuries of royal processions. The Horse Guards Parade, Trafalgar Square, and Whitehall all served as the backdrop for this momentous journey. Military personnel stood at attention along the route, their uniforms crisp and their bearing proud. This was their moment to honor the monarchy and show their dedication to the crown. George looked out the window with wide eyes, taking in the sea of faces. Some people were crying with joy, others were cheering loudly, and many held their phones high to capture photos and videos. He had been in public before, but nothing could have prepared him for this scale of attention. His father noticed his expression and leaned forward slightly. William spoke words of encouragement, reminding George that these people were here to celebrate their family and their country. The young prince nodded and straightened his shoulders, determined to live up to the moment. Charlotte pressed her face closer to the window, fascinated by the colorful decorations that adorned every building. Red, white, and blue bunting hung from lampposts and balconies. Giant screens had been set up in public squares so that everyone could watch the ceremony, even those who could not fit inside Westminster Abbey. Street performers entertained the crowds while they waited. Musicians played patriotic songs. The entire city felt like one enormous celebration of British heritage and pride. Young Louis could barely contain his excitement. He bounced slightly on his mother's lap, pointing at things that caught his attention: a man waving a giant flag, a group of children holding balloons, a military band marching in perfect formation. Kate gently reminded him to sit still, but she could not help smiling at his enthusiasm. Louis represented the innocent joy of childhood, untouched by the formality and protocol that governed royal life. His genuine reactions would later become some of the most beloved moments captured by photographers that day. As the carriage approached Westminster Abbey, the atmosphere grew even more intense. The Abbey had been the site of royal coronations for nearly 1,000 years. Kings and queens throughout history had walked through its doors to receive their crowns and take their oaths. The building itself seemed to radiate centuries of tradition and significance. Its Gothic architecture reached toward the sky, and its stained glass windows sparkled in the morning light. This was the heart of royal ceremony, and today it would witness the coronation of Charles III. The carriage slowed as it neared the Abbey entrance. Cameras from every major news organization in the world were positioned to capture the arrival. Commentators spoke in hushed, reverent tones as they described the scene to their viewers. The excitement was palpable. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The arrival of the Wales family represented the future of the monarchy, and their entrance would set the tone for the entire ceremony. William exchanged a meaningful glance with Kate. They had discussed this moment many times in private. They both understood that their role today was not just to support King Charles III, but to show the world that the monarchy remained strong and united. They would present themselves as a modern royal family, connected to tradition yet relevant to contemporary society. Their children would be the living symbols of continuity, representing the generations yet to come. The carriage came to a gentle stop. Palace attendants moved forward to open the door. The moment had arrived. Kate took a deep breath and smoothed her gown one final time. William adjusted his uniform jacket. George, Charlotte, and Louis looked to their parents for guidance. Kate gave them an encouraging smile while William nodded with confidence. They were ready. As the carriage door opened, the roar of the crowd became deafening. The Wales family was about to make their grand entrance. The family stepped out of the carriage one by one, each movement captured by hundreds of cameras. William emerged first, offering his hand to Kate as she gracefully descended the steps. Her cape flowed behind her like a river of silver. Charlotte followed, her face lit up with a radiant smile. George walked with measured steps, conscious of his responsibility. Finally, Kate lifted Louis down, and the youngest prince waved enthusiastically at the crowd. The image of the five of them standing together on the steps of Westminster Abbey would become one of the defining photographs of the entire coronation. The interior of Westminster Abbey was breathtaking. Centuries of history seemed to whisper from every stone wall. The vaulted ceilings soared above, decorated with intricate carvings and golden details that caught the light from thousands of candles and modern lighting fixtures. The pews were filled with dignitaries from around the world, prime ministers, presidents, royal families from other nations, and distinguished guests all sat in respectful silence, waiting for the ceremony to begin. As the Wales family walked down the central aisle, all eyes turned to them. Kate moved with the grace of someone born to royal life, though she had come from a middle-class background. Her transformation into a beloved member of the royal family had been remarkable. The ivory gown she wore seemed to glow in the Abbey's light. Her posture was perfect, her expression serene yet warm. She acknowledged the guests with subtle nods, maintaining the delicate balance between approachability and royal dignity. William walked beside her, his military bearing evident in every step. He represented the continuation of a 1,000-year tradition, yet his modern sensibility was clear in the way he interacted with his family. His hand occasionally touched the small of Kate's back, a gesture of support and partnership. Together they embodied a new kind of royal couple, one that valued both tradition and genuine emotional connection. Prince George walked slightly behind his parents, his role as a page boy requiring him to maintain a specific position in the procession. The young prince had rehearsed his duties many times, but the reality of performing them in front of thousands of guests and millions of television viewers was something entirely different. He kept his eyes focused ahead, remembering his mother's advice to walk with confidence and purpose. Every step he took was careful and measured. Princess Charlotte followed with remarkable poise for an 8-year-old. Her white dress fluttered gently as she walked, and her small tiara caught the light beautifully. She had practiced her entrance many times, pretending to walk down long corridors in the palace, but nothing could compare to the real experience of Westminster Abbey filled with important guests. Charlotte kept her head high and a gentle smile on her face, determined to make her parents proud. Prince Louis provided the most memorable moments of the procession. The 5-year-old looked around with wide-eyed wonder, occasionally forgetting to maintain the serious expression expected at such formal events. At one point he waved at someone in the crowd, drawing quiet chuckles from nearby guests. Kate gently guided him forward, but there was no hiding the smile on her face. Louis represented the innocent joy that reminded everyone why the monarchy mattered to preserve traditions for future generations. The family took their designated seats near the front of the Abbey. From this position, they would have a clear view of the entire coronation ceremony. George would later need to assist with certain ceremonial duties, but for now, he sat between his parents, his small hands folded in his lap. Charlotte sat on Kate's other side, her eyes fixed on the altar where her grandfather would soon be crowned. Louis sat on William's lap, the only concession made to his young age. The atmosphere in the Abbey was one of reverent anticipation. Organ music filled the space with rich, majestic sounds. The choir, dressed in crimson robes, stood ready to sing hymns that had been performed at coronations for centuries. Religious leaders from various faiths sat in positions of honor, reflecting the modern monarchy's recognition of Britain's diverse society. Military officers in full dress uniform represented the armed forces who served the crown. Television cameras captured every angle of the scene. Directors in control rooms made split-second decisions about which shots to show to the billions of viewers watching around the world. Close-ups of the Wales children became instant favorites. George's serious concentration, Charlotte's bright smile, and Louis's animated expressions provided human interest moments that balanced the formal solemnity of the occasion. Social media began buzzing with comments about how adorable and well-behaved the royal children were. As the ceremony was about to begin, William reached over and squeezed Kate's hand briefly. She returned the gesture, and for a moment, they were simply a couple supporting each other through an important family event. Then the trumpets sounded, announcing the arrival of King Charles III. The congregation rose to their feet. The coronation of a new monarch was beginning, and the Wales family stood ready to witness and participate in this historic moment that would define the future of the British monarchy. The coronation ceremony unfolded with magnificent splendor. King Charles III entered the Abbey wearing the traditional crimson velvet robe, his expression one of solemn dedication. The Archbishop of Canterbury stood ready to perform the sacred rites that would officially transform Charles into the crowned monarch of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. Every element of the ceremony had been planned with meticulous attention to detail, blending ancient traditions with modern sensibilities. Prince William watched his father with a complex mixture of emotions. This was the man who had raised him, who had prepared him for his own eventual role as king. Now Charles was taking his place in the long line of British monarchs. William felt the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. One day, perhaps decades from now, he would stand where his father stood. He would wear the crown and take the same oaths. The thought was both daunting and inspiring. Kate kept a watchful eye on their children throughout the ceremony. George sat very still, his young face serious as he observed everything happening around him. He would soon need to perform his duties as a page boy, and Kate could see the concentration in his eyes. Charlotte was equally attentive, her gaze moving between the altar and her grandfather. She seemed to understand the importance of the moment even at her young age. Louis, however, struggled to maintain his composure for such an extended period. The young prince's reactions became one of the most talked-about aspects of the coronation. At various points during the ceremony, Louis covered his ears when the music became too loud. He yawned openly during one of the longer speeches. He made faces at his sister when he thought no one was looking. His mother gently corrected him each time, but there was no real way to suppress the natural behavior of a 5-year-old. The television cameras captured every moment, and viewers around the world found his antics endearing rather than inappropriate. The most significant moment came when the Archbishop placed St. Edward's crown on Charles's head. The crown, made of solid gold and adorned with precious gemstones, weighed nearly 5 pounds. It had been worn by monarchs since 1661. As it settled onto Charles's head, the congregation erupted in applause. Trumpets blared. The organ played triumphant music. Charles III was now officially the crowned king of the United Kingdom. The historical significance of the moment was overwhelming. George's time to participate came during the homage ceremony. As a page of honor, he was required to assist with carrying the ceremonial robes. The young prince rose from his seat with quiet determination. He walked to the altar with careful steps, joined by the other pages. Together they helped manage the heavy robes and train of the coronation garments. George performed his duties perfectly, his concentration never wavering. William and Kate watched with visible pride as their son fulfilled his historical role. The ceremony included readings from various religious texts and performances by world-renowned musicians. The choir sang ancient hymns with voices that seemed to reach toward heaven. The acoustics of Westminster Abbey made every note resonate with power and beauty. Charlotte swayed slightly to the music, clearly moved by the magnificent sounds. Even Louis became quieter during the musical performances, his attention captured by the grandeur of the moment. As the ceremony progressed, Kate found herself reflecting on her own journey. Years ago, she had been a university student who happened to meet a prince. Now she sat in Westminster Abbey, watching her father-in-law become king while her own children participated in the ceremony. She was the future queen consort, the mother of a future king, and a symbol of how the monarchy could evolve while maintaining its essential traditions. Her presence represented hope for a modern, relatable royal family. William felt a deep sense of responsibility settling over him. As the ceremony continued, he thought about his own future and the promises he had made to serve his country. He glanced at Kate, drawing strength from her calm presence. Then he looked at his children, each representing the future in their own way. George, the heir who would one day wear the crown. Charlotte and Louis, who would support their brother just as William's own siblings had supported him. They were a team, a family united in service. As the coronation ceremony reached its conclusion, King Charles III stood before his subjects wearing the crown and holding the scepter and orb. He had taken his oaths, received the blessing of the church, and accepted the burden of leadership. The congregation stood and sang the national anthem with powerful voices. William joined in, his son standing beside him. Kate held Charlotte's hand while Louis leaned against his father's leg. Together, the Wales family sang for their king, their country, and their shared future. The ceremony concluded with a procession that would take the newly crowned King Charles III through the streets of London. The Wales family prepared to join this historic journey. Palace aides moved quickly to ensure everyone was ready for the next phase of the day. George's pageboy uniform was inspected one more time. Charlotte's tiara was adjusted. Louis was given a stern reminder about proper behavior, though everyone knew that keeping a 5-year-old in check for hours was nearly impossible. Outside Westminster Abbey, the crowd had grown even larger. People stood shoulder to shoulder, hoping for a glimpse of the royal family. The procession route stretched for miles, lined with barriers to keep the crowds at a safe distance while still allowing them to see and wave to the passing carriages. Security personnel were positioned at strategic intervals. Police officers on horseback helped manage the massive gathering. Helicopters circled overhead, providing aerial footage for news broadcasts. The royal carriages were arranged in a specific order. King Charles III and Queen Camilla would lead the procession in the gold state coach, a magnificent vehicle that had been used for coronation since 1762. Behind them, Prince William, Kate, and their children would ride in the Diamond Jubilee stagecoach. This beautiful carriage featured modern amenities like air conditioning and hydraulic stabilizers, making it more comfortable for the long journey through London streets. As the Wales family stepped into their carriage, they were greeted by cheers from the nearby crowd. Kate helped Louis climb inside while William assisted Charlotte. George entered last, his responsibilities as a page boy now complete. The interior of the carriage was luxurious but not overly ornate. Large windows allowed the public to see inside, which was the whole point of the procession. The people wanted to see their royal family, and the royal family wanted to be seen. The procession began with a trumpet fanfare that echoed through the streets. The gold state coach rolled forward first, carrying King Charles III and Queen Camilla. They waved to the crowds with practiced grace. Then came the Wales family in their carriage. William and Kate sat on one side with Louis between them. George and Charlotte sat opposite, their young faces visible through the large windows. The children waved enthusiastically, delighted by the response from the crowd. The journey through London was unforgettable. Every street was decorated with British flags and royal insignia. Buildings were draped with banners celebrating the coronation. Giant screens displayed live footage of the procession so that people further back in the crowd could still see what was happening. Street performers entertained the waiting masses. Musicians played patriotic songs. The atmosphere was one of pure celebration and national pride. Prince George took his role seriously, waving with measured movements and maintaining a composed expression. He had learned from his parents that being in the public eye required a balance between warmth and dignity. Princess Charlotte, however, brought pure joy to the moment. She waved with both hands, smiled broadly, and occasionally pressed her face close to the window to get a better view of the crowds. Her enthusiasm was infectious and quickly became one of the most shared images on social media. Prince Louis provided the comic relief that everyone needed after the long, formal ceremony. He pulled funny faces at people in the crowd. He waved so enthusiastically that his whole body moved with the motion. At one point, he pretended to conduct an imaginary orchestra, matching the rhythm of the military bands that marched alongside the carriages. Kate tried to maintain a serious expression, but she could not help laughing at her youngest son's antics. William shook his head with affectionate exasperation. The military presence during the procession was impressive. Thousands of servicemen and women marched in formation, representing all branches of the armed forces. The household cavalry rode on magnificent horses, their armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. The Welsh Guards, the Coldstream Guards, and other historic regiments displayed their distinctive uniforms and bore their regimental colors with pride. Military bands played stirring marches that added to the pageantry of the occasion. As the procession approached Buckingham Palace, the crowds grew even more dense. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The traditional balcony appearance would follow, where the royal family would wave to the gathered masses and watch the Royal Air Force fly past. The carriage passed through the palace gates, and the Wales children pressed their faces to the windows, eager to see what came next. The coronation day was far from over, and the most photographed moment was still to come. Inside Buckingham Palace, the Wales family had a brief moment to catch their breath. The children were excited but tired from the long day. Palace staff offered refreshments and made sure everyone was comfortable before the balcony appearance. This would be the culmination of the coronation celebrations, the moment when the newly crowned king would present himself to his people alongside his family. Millions had gathered outside the palace, and billions more would watch on television around the world. Kate knelt down to speak with each of her children individually. She reminded George that people would be taking countless photographs, so he should stand tall and smile naturally. She told Charlotte to wave gently rather than too enthusiastically, and she asked Louis to please try his best to behave, knowing full well that asking a 5-year-old to stand still for an extended period was optimistic at best. The children nodded solemnly, understanding that this final appearance was important. William checked his uniform one last time in a nearby mirror. He thought about the weight of the day and what it meant for his family's future. His father was now the king. His son was the heir to the throne after him. The line of succession was clear and stable. But more than that, William felt proud of how his family had conducted themselves throughout the day. They had shown the world that the monarchy remained relevant, that it could adapt while honoring tradition. The moment arrived. Palace officials opened the tall doors that led to the famous balcony. The sound of the crowd outside was like thunder, a continuous roar of voices, cheers, and celebration. King Charles III stepped out first, followed by Queen Camilla. The noise level increased dramatically. Then came William and Kate with their 3 children. The crowd's reaction was overwhelming. People screamed with joy. Cameras flashed like lightning. This was the image the world had been waiting for. The royal family arranged themselves along the balcony railing. King Charles stood in the center with Queen Camilla beside him. William and Kate positioned themselves nearby with their children in front of them. George stood straight and proud, remembering all his mother's advice. Charlotte waved with a beautiful smile that lit up her face, and Louis, true to form, immediately made his presence known by waving both hands wildly and pulling faces that made the crowd laugh with delight. The scene was magnificent. The mall stretched out before the palace, completely filled with people as far as the eye could see. British flags waved in every direction. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over everything. News helicopters circled above, broadcasting the scene to every corner of the globe. This was a moment of unity and celebration, a time when people set aside their differences and came together to honor their monarchy and their country. Then came the Royal Air Force flypast, a stunning aerial display that had been a coronation tradition for decades. The crowd fell silent in anticipation. The sound of approaching aircraft grew louder. Suddenly, a formation of historic planes appeared in the sky, flying in perfect formation. They were followed by modern jets that streaked across the blue expanse. The roar of the engines combined with the cheers of the crowd created an unforgettable symphony of sound. The children watched the fly past with amazement. George pointed at different aircraft, clearly fascinated by the military display. Charlotte clapped her hands with excitement. Louis jumped up and down, completely forgetting about proper royal protocol in his enthusiasm. Kate placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, but she was smiling. William laughed openly at his son's reaction. Even King Charles turned to see what his grandson was doing, his expression showing affection and amusement. As the last aircraft disappeared from view, the royal family waved one final time to the crowd. The moment was bittersweet. The day had been long and exhausting, but it had also been extraordinary. They had participated in history. They had shown the world that the British monarchy remained strong and united. The Wales children had captured hearts everywhere with their charm, innocence, and genuine personalities. They represented hope for the future. As they stepped back inside Buckingham Palace, away from the public eye at last, the Wales family shared a moment of private celebration. William embraced Kate, thanking her for her support throughout the day. George, Charlotte, and Louis hugged their parents, relieved that their formal duties were finally over. They had done it. They had participated in the coronation of King Charles III, and they had done so with grace, dignity, and just enough humor to remind everyone that behind the crowns and titles, they were still a loving family. The day would be remembered forever as a defining moment in royal history, and the Wales family had played their part perfectly.